My name is Jacob Harris. I am 24, and last week I graduated from Redwood Valley University RVU with a degree in business analytics. Alone in a family obsessed with image and attention, I was always the quiet one, the reliable son who worked double shifts, while my sister, Madison Harris, collected brand deals and applause. They called me the practical one, but what they really meant was the invisible one. I have spent my whole life trying to earn a place at their table, believing that if I achieved enough, they would finally look my way. But on the day I walked across that stage, the day that should have belonged to me, my family boarded a flight without me. And when my phone rang 37 times in a row, I thought maybe something terrible had happened. I was right, just not in the way I expected. What would you do if your biggest moment came and the people you loved most just did not show up? If this story resonates, tell us how you handled that heartbreak. Your story might heal someone still waiting to be noticed. The sun poured through my window that morning like it knew what this day was supposed to mean. I had barely slept. My gown hung on the closet door like armor, my cap balanced next to it, tassel still untouched. I spent too long in front of the mirror brushing my hair back from my face, applying no makeup, just smoothing things out with a trembling hand. Not for vanity, for hope. For once, I wanted to feel like someone worth looking at. A printed invitation sat on my desk. Cream card stock navy trim, my handwriting neat but nervous. Reserved seating for family of Jacob Harris. As guests, I had sent it to my parents 4 weeks ago. Texted a reminder, called twice. "We will be there," Mom had said, distracted, as if confirming a grocery list. The auditorium buzzed with color and joy. Crimson and silver banners, flowers, the smell of coffee and perfume and summer nerves. Fathers in suits wiping sweat from their brows. Mothers clutching bouquets. Students laughing too loud like they were trying to mask the fact that everything was ending. I walked in alone. A volunteer in an RVU polo guided me to my seat near the front. "Your guests should be able to see you perfectly from here." She smiled. I nodded. Did not correct her. My phone buzzed in my backpack. I pulled it out expecting a "we are parking now" or "save us seats," anything. But instead I saw a new message in the family group chat. "Mom, sweetheart, we cannot make it today." Something urgent came up. "We will make it up to you later." I froze. My chest went cold. Seconds later, a story popped up on Madison Harris' Instagram. There they were, all 3 of them. Mom, Dad, and Madison smiling at the airport, luggage in hand. Madison flashing a peace sign next to the caption, "Santa Monica Beach Spa Trip Drives Family Time." They were beaming. I was missing. I stared at the photo so long the screen dimmed. My name was called Jacob Harris, summa cum laude. I stood on autopilot. My hands were shaking. I glanced toward the row I had asked the organizers to reserve front and center right by the aisle. 6 empty seats. All around me, families cheered, posters waved, flowers burst in color. I smiled for the camera, a practiced empty smile, and stepped up the stairs. That was when the first vibration hit, then another, then a third. By the time I reached the dean, my gown pocket buzzed non-stop. 37 missed calls, all from Dad. No messages, no congrats, just come home immediately. I sat back down, still gripping my diploma. The crowd erupted with cheers for someone else's name, but all I could hear was the dull roar of static behind my eyes. My friends were clapping, a few waved from the back. Emily Rhodes, my roommate and the only person who had been there for me the past 4 years, blew a kiss from across the aisle. I looked down at my phone again. 37 calls, 3 words. Come home immediately. As if nothing I was doing mattered. As if my ceremony, my moment, was just a commercial break in their lives. I blinked back tears. Not because I was surprised, but because I was not. They did not show up. They never had. And now, after skipping the biggest day of my life, They wanted me to come running like I owed them something. I stared at the 6 empty chairs one last time. No flowers, no photos, no applause, nothing but silence. And then I stood, and I walked away. I had waited 4 years for them to clap for me. All I got was an order. I did not go home that night. Instead, I sat on a bench just off Redwood Valley University, still in my gown, watching the sun dip below the trees while students and families passed by with balloons and armfuls of flowers. Laughter bounced in the air. Bursts of congratulations echoed across the quad, and every now and then someone would glance at me like I was lost. Maybe I was. I texted Emily, "I am okay. Just needed a minute." But I was not okay. Not even close. My fingers gripped the edge of the diploma folder like it might suddenly prove something, as if holding that piece of paper tight enough would make the absence hurt less, as if it could rewrite every other moment where I had been left behind, because this was not the first time. It started early, always small at first moments, easy to brush off forgettable to anyone who was not me. Like when I was 11 and won first place at the state science fair. I had built a working water filtration system from recycled plastic and gravel. I remember standing on the auditorium stage in Harbor Point, the glass trophy warm in my sweaty hands, scanning the crowd for my parents. They were not there. Later that night, I rode the bus home alone, cradling the trophy. I scrolled through my phone and saw a photo of you, Madison. You had posted from a local junior modeling competition, a sash on her shoulder, Mom and Dad on either side of her grinning wide like she had just cured cancer. No one asked me how the fair went. When I was 14, I broke my arm at summer camp, a rock climbing activity gone wrong. The pain was sharp, immediate. I remember screaming, which was not like me. I was always the quiet one, the composed one. The counselor called my mom. When she arrived, she barely looked at the swollen arm before saying, "You are stronger than this. Do not exaggerate." She spent more time chatting with another parent than checking if I was okay. But when Madison scraped her knee the next week in the park full ER visit, my poor baby mom whispered, holding her like she was made of glass. That was when I stopped expecting comfort. By 17, I learned to expect even less. My birthday came and went with a discount notebook from a dollar store. Dad handed it to me with a half smile. "You like writing right." That was it. A month later, Madison got a custom cake, a party bus, and a new iPhone. The same one I could not afford even on sale. She always got more. More attention, more hugs, more praise. It was not just birthdays or scraped knees. It was everything. Christmas gifts, dinner, conversations, vacations. They posted about her every week. Her selfies, her brand collabs, her skincare routine. My scholarship to RVU got a thumbs up and well, at least we do not have to pay. It became a pattern. No, not a pattern, a system. One where I was the stable one, the background character, the one who handled things. Madison was the star, and I believed that was fine. For years, I told myself it was okay to be quiet, that it was better to be the calm one, the responsible one. I wore that identity like armor. If I was not going to be adored, at least I could be useful. So I stopped complaining. I worked 4 jobs a calf in the mornings, the campus library in the evenings, and unpaid internships wherever I could get them. I managed to pay rent, tuition, groceries. I became the guy who handled his business. And when it got too much, when I worked until 2:30 a.m. and then studied until 4:30, I would picture graduation day. I saw them clapping in the crowd, finally proud. It was the illusion I fed myself so I would not shatter. But illusions do not survive impact. That night after the ceremony, I went back to my apartment in Redwood Village. I slipped off the gown and laid it gently on my bed. It still smelled like fresh fabric and sweat and shame. My phone buzzed again. "Emily, come over. I have cake. You do not have to talk. Just exist." I stared at the screen. My thumb hovered. I wanted to say yes to feel seen, but instead I typed, "Thanks. I think I just need to be alone tonight." She did not push. That was why she was the only one I trusted. I collapsed on the couch. The apartment was too quiet. My roommate was gone for the weekend. Graduation trips, family reunions, things normal people did. I looked around. No streamers, no bouquet, no card, no "we are proud of you." Just my name on a degree that I earned while being invisible. I do not know how long I sat there. Eventually, I curled up with a blanket and tried to fall asleep. But every time I closed my eyes, I saw those 6 empty seats front and center reserved waiting just like I had been. In the morning, I woke to dozens of stories on my feed. Classmates hugging their parents, holding their degrees, popping champagne in the quad. And then I saw Madison's newest post. A photo from the resort spa in Santa Monica Beach, sunglasses on, bathrobe tied just so. Caption, "Self-care is everything. Deserve it. Share family first." The words made me nauseous. Family first. Whose family? Certainly not mine. I was still staring at the post when my phone rang. Dad. I let it go to voicemail. Then it rang again and again. The third time I answered. Before I could say anything, he launched in. "Jacob, finally listen. We need you to come by today. It is important." No hello. No "how was your ceremony?" Not even a "sorry we missed it." Just "we need you." For what I did not ask. I just listened. But something inside me started to tighten. They did not care how hard I worked, how much I gave up. They never had. All they knew was that I would show up when they called. But this time, something was different. This time I needed to know, was it finally about me, or was I just useful again? The drive to Westfield was quiet. Too quiet. My old Chevy Cavalier hummed along Highway 27. Windows rolled up, silence louder than any music could have been. I did not know what I was expecting, really. Maybe a weak apology. Maybe Mom would say, "I am sorry we missed it. Things just got hectic." Maybe Dad would pat my shoulder like he used to before he stopped trying. But deep down, I already knew better. When I pulled into the driveway, Madison's pink duffel bags were piled near the front door, expensive, monogrammed, just enough scuff to seem lived in. I stepped over them on my way in. The house still smelled like lavender and lemon cleaner Mom's signature. Everything was in place. Too perfect. They were not mourning missing my graduation. They were prepping for a cover-up. Jacob. Dad called from the kitchen like I was 11 and late for dinner. "There you are. Come sit." I walked in and found him at the table with his laptop open. Spreadsheets pulled up. Mom poured coffee into 3 mugs, slid one toward me, then sat without making eye contact. Madison was already scrolling through her phone, manicured nails tapping like clockwork. She did not look up. No one said a word about my gown, or the stage, or the diploma that I had to carry home by myself. So Dad began clearing his throat like this was a business meeting. "We have got a bit of a situation." I did not sit. I crossed my arms. "You dragged me here the day after graduation because of a situation." Madison groaned. "God. Jacob, can you not be dramatic for once?" My jaw clenched. "Try me." Mom finally looked up. "Your sister had a little trouble with her card this weekend, overspending. We think the bank overreacted, but they froze her account and Dad turned the laptop toward me. A red warning banner flashed across Madison's credit account dashboard. The balance is at $8,200. Pioneer National Bank needs immediate payment to lift the hold. And you called me because Dad sighed the way he does when he thinks I am being difficult. You are good with money. You are the responsible one. And you have been saving, have you not?" There it was. The whole point. Not a congratulatory hug, not even a photo. just a request. Let me get this straight, I said, voice low. You skipped my graduation, lied about something urgent, flew to Santa Monica Beach, and now the first thing you say to me is that you need me to cover Madison's mess. Madison finally looked up, rolling her eyes. It was not a mess. The hotel charged me twice, and the spa was not even that good. I turned to Mom. You said you would make it up to me. Was this your idea of that Jacob? She said, tone clipped. Your sister is under a lot of pressure. She has sponsors, followers. She is not a child. I snapped. She is 21. She travels. She shops. She gets more attention in a week than I have gotten in a lifetime, and now I am supposed to save her. Jacob, Dad warned, do not turn this into a fight. We need you to help. That is all. I laughed short, bitter. No, that is not all. You did not even ask how my graduation went. You did not even pretend to care. Madison scoffed. You want us to throw a parade because you got a piece of paper that hit harder than it should have. I took a breath. I worked 4 jobs. I paid my way through college. I have never asked for anything from this family. I stepped back, but you have always asked from me. Silence. The kind that told me they were not sorry. They were just inconvenienced. Dad cleared his throat again. Well, if you are not going to help, I am not. He blinked. Excuse me, I am not transferring a dime. If Madison is grown enough to jet off for spa weekends, she is grown enough to handle a credit freeze. Mom's expression hardened. Jacob, do not be selfish. There it was, the word they always used when I refused to be their safety net. I turned toward the door. You do not get to call me selfish. Not after you left me sitting in an auditorium by myself while everyone else was being celebrated. I walked out before they could say anything else. Back in my car, I just sat behind the wheel for a few minutes, the engine off. My hands were shaking. The rage was slow burning, not fire but ice. I did not cry, not this time. Instead, I called. Emily, you okay? She answered on the first ring. Do you still have that cake? She exhaled into the phone. I will cut you a giant slice. You coming over? Yeah, I said. I am done pretending like I am not angry. Emily's apartment was warm and cluttered, full of plants and mismatched mugs. We sat on her worn couch, forks in hand, a tray of leftover chocolate cake between us. I cannot believe they actually said that to you, she muttered after I told her everything. I shrugged. Honestly, I can. I just did not want to. She leaned back. You know, Jacob, sometimes I wonder what would happen if you stopped trying to earn their love. I paused. Then what am I supposed to do? Maybe, she said. You stop chasing their approval and start giving yourself the respect they never did. I did not say anything, but her words landed hard. Later that night, I lay in bed staring at the ceiling. The shadows played across the paint like waves. Respect. I had been fighting for a version of love that only existed when I was useful. Maybe I did not need their validation. Maybe I never had. But if that was true, why did it still hurt so much? My phone buzzed at 2:45 a.m. Incoming call. Mom. I watched the screen flash until it dimmed. Then it buzzed again. Incoming call. Dad. I let it ring. This time I was not going to answer, but in the morning I would find out they had not stopped with just the phone calls. This time they had gone further. They wanted my money, and they did not even bother asking. If they would not remember my graduation, maybe they would remember my silence. The call from the bank came just after lunch the next day. I was cleaning out my inbox, half listening to a podcast about men in finance, when my phone buzzed with an unknown number. Hi, may I speak with Jacob Harris? The woman on the line asked, polite but urgent. This is he. This is Erica Collins from Pioneer National Bank's RVU Fraud Department. We are calling to confirm a recent transfer request from your checking account totaling $5,980. The transaction was initiated this morning via online banking. Do you authorize this payment? I froze. I did not make any transfers today, I said, my voice catching. All right. That is what we suspected. The IP address logged for the transaction is located in Westfield, Stonehaven City. Does that location sound familiar? It did. Too familiar. My parents' house. I swallowed. My throat burned. Cancel it immediately. We already flagged it as suspicious. No funds were moved, but we recommend updating your login credentials as soon as possible and will be sending you a follow-up form to confirm fraud on the account. I thanked her, hung up, and stared at my phone. My heart thudded dully against my ribs. I was not angry, not yet. Not even hurt, just numb. They had not just ignored my graduation. They had not just demanded I pay off Madison's debt. They had tried to take the money anyway. My money, the savings I had built from sleepless nights, tip jars, spreadsheet marathons, the little bit I had scraped together to start a future. They had reached in like it was theirs. And worse, I had given them the key. Back in high school, my dad insisted I give him access to my online banking so we can keep an eye on your spending, he had said. Make sure you are building smart habits. I had been 17. I never changed the password. Some small part of me, despite everything, had still believed they would respect that line. That part of me died right then. I spent the next 2 hours resetting everything. New passwords for every bank account, email, Venmo, Cash App, PayPal. I enabled two-factor authentication on everything. I even updated the passcode on my phone. It felt like changing the locks after a break-in. Not because you were not careful, but because you assumed the people with a key would never use it against you. That night I did not sleep. I lay on the couch, staring at the ceiling. Every muscle tensed. I kept expecting my phone to ring again. Another demand, another lie. Instead, silence. It was worse somehow. The next morning I called my mom. She picked up after 2 rings. Voice sugary sweet. Jacob, I was just about to call you. I did not even say hello. Did you try to transfer money from my account? A pause just long enough to confirm guilt. Then she exhaled like I was the one being difficult. Jacob, do not be so dramatic. It was not some malicious thing. Madison needed help. You were not answering. We figured you would just take it. You are her brother, she said sharply. You have savings. We are a family. Helping each other out is not theft. I laughed a cold, hollow sound. It is when you use someone's login without asking. She sighed again. God, Jacob, you are always so rigid. We have always said you are too uptight about money. No, I said. You have always assumed I would clean up everyone else's mess. She did not respond. I have covered her late fees, her missed payments. I even let you take the refund from my scholarship that one year because you said the roof needed fixing and now you steal from me. Jacob, do not. I snapped. Do not call it family. You do not get to weaponize that word when you only use it to take. Another long pause, then a muffled voice in the background. Dad? I think asking who she was talking to. I hung up. I did not wait to hear what came next. I could not. I threw my phone across the room, not hard enough to break, just hard enough to make a sound. Something real. Then I sat on the edge of the couch and cried. Not the kind of crying I used to do quietly in my bedroom, afraid someone might hear. This time I cried with all the sound, all the air, all the pressure of years of being second place in a family where I was only visible when someone else needed a favor. And when the sobs finally slowed, I whispered the one truth I had never dared speak out loud. I do not trust them. I never really did. Emily showed up later with 2 coffees and a bag of bagels. I had not told her what happened yet, but the second she saw my face, she sat next to me, wordless. We sat in that silence for a while, not the empty kind, the kind that makes room for honesty. They tried to take money from me, I finally said without asking. She blinked slow. Jesus, Jacob. I nodded. I used to think they just forgot about me, but now I think they saw me as a backup plan all along. Emily did not argue. She just handed me a napkin. So what now I do not know. I stared at the carpet, but I cannot go back. Not this time. She nudged my shoulder gently. Then do not. I looked at her, looked at the way she saw me without flinching, at the way she did not expect anything but truth. Maybe this was what real family looked like. Not blood, not obligation, just showing up. Honestly, fully. I think I need to move, I said suddenly. Emily raised an eyebrow. Move where? Out of East Campus North. I need distance, a reset. Something that does not have their fingerprints all over it. She nodded like she had already been waiting for me to get there. I know a place, she said. Crestwood City downtown, small but clean. I breathed out. Just once, deep and full and clear. I do. That weekend, Emily helped me pack. I boxed up every part of that apartment, textbooks, mugs, job interviews, the diploma still in its cardboard folder. I did not take the old photos, not the ones of Madison and me at Christmas. Not the family photo from my high school graduation where I stood in the back like a prop. I left them in a drawer. When I moved into the new place, I bought a new password notebook, locked it in a drawer, set a new code on the door. For the first time, my space belonged to me. No eyes watching, no hands reaching in, just me. And for the first time in a very long time, that was enough. But I should have known they would not stop at silence. Because when people are used to taking from you, they do not like being told no. And next time, they would not ask for help. They would ask for something bigger. They would ask for an investment. If they could steal my money, what else were they willing to take? Downtown. Crestwood City was a different rhythm entirely. Faster, louder, but somehow less invasive than East Campus North, where I could not walk down the street without bumping into reminders of the person I used to be. Cafes I studied in until midnight. The library steps where I cried after a midterm. The apartment building where Madison once visited and complained about my chair furniture. Here I was a stranger, and for the first time, I liked it. My new apartment was tiny, a converted studio above a coffee shop, but it was mine. The floors creaked. The heater made weird noises at night. The windows fogged up with the rain. Still, it felt more like home than anywhere I had ever lived. I took the diploma out of its cardboard folder and leaned it against the wall on top of the dresser. I did not frame it, not yet. But it sat there like a quiet witness, a reminder that I made it, even if no one had clapped. My morning started with instant coffee and the sound of streetcars below. I would scroll job boards with one hand and draft resumes with the other. After a week of searching, I landed a junior financial analyst role at a fintech startup. Small team, big goals, lots of caffeine. The office was housed in a converted industrial building near the Brickyard district. Exposed brick, long communal tables, and a cold brew keg on tap. Every startup cliché wrapped in one. But it was clean. It was structured. It was something I could grow into. My boss, Vivian, was the kind of woman who wore sneakers with blazers and never smiled unless she meant it. She noticed things. Mistakes, yes, but also potential. You think in systems, she said during my first week? That is rare. Do not apologize for it. No one had ever said something like that to me before. Not without turning it into an insult. I worked late most nights, not because I had to, but because I wanted to. I felt useful not as someone's backup plan or emotional punching bag, but as someone who knew what he was doing. At lunch, I sat alone for the first few weeks. I did not mind. It gave me time to breathe, to process, to think. Emily texted often, usually with links to therapy memes or photos of her cat Milo sleeping in ridiculous poses. One afternoon she messaged, "You free Friday movie night?" I stared at the screen for a long moment before replying, "Rain check. Work has been crazy." Which was not a lie, but it was not the whole truth either. The truth was, I did not know how to be close to people without expecting them to hurt me, even Emily. So I stayed busy. I organized reports, built spreadsheets, found comforting columns, and clean math. Numbers did not manipulate. They did not guilt trip. They did not ask you to forgive and forget, and then steal from your account. The next week, Vivian noticed my hours. One night, as I was shutting down around 8 p.m., she leaned against the doorframe to my desk pod. "You trying to win Employee of the Month in your first quarter?" she asked. I laughed weakly, just trying not to mess up. She tilted her head. "You do not seem like someone who messes up. I have just always had to clean up after other people." She nodded slowly, like she understood more than she let on. "You know you do not have to prove anything here. You are already here. That is enough." I blinked. No one had ever told me I was enough. Not without conditions. Not without strings. I went home that night and cried for reasons I could not name. On Saturday, Emily showed up at my door with donuts and a Netflix login. "No more rain checks," she said, letting herself in. "Your silence is starting to sound like your old coping habit." She was not wrong. I brewed coffee. We sat cross-legged on the floor, sugar dusting our fingers, the city buzzing below. She paused halfway through a bite and looked at me. "You know I am not them, right?" I nodded. "I do. Then why are you acting like I'm going to disappear the second you get comfortable?" I did not answer right away. I did not know how to say that trust felt like a switchblade, something sharp I could not hold for too long without cutting myself. "You have seen me," I finally said, "and you stayed. That scares me more than being alone." Emily softened. "I am staying because you are worth staying for. That is not a trick." I looked down at my coffee steam curling upward like smoke. "Okay," I whispered. "I am trying." "That is enough," she said. We watched bad rom-coms and talked about nothing. It felt like healing. Quiet, slow, messy healing. 2 weeks later, I received a text from my mom. "Dinner this Sunday. Everyone misses you. Come home." No emojis, no explanations, just 7 words that landed like a stone in my gut. I stared at it for a full minute before showing Emily. "Sounds suspiciously normal," she muttered. "That is what worries me." "You going?" I hesitated. "I think I have to. Not for them, for me. I need to see what this really is." And Emily did not argue. She just said, "Text me if you need an emergency exit." I smiled. Deal. That Sunday, I stood outside my parents' front door for the first time in over a month. My hand hovered over the doorknob. Something felt off. The lights were too bright, the silence too heavy. When I stepped inside, the living room looked staged. The table was set with linen napkins, wine glasses, candles, a spread of dishes Mom had not cooked in years. Madison sat at the head of the table in a silk blazer and glossy makeup, smiling like a debutante on a talk show. Dad stood near the fireplace, posture stiff like a CEO presenting a pitch deck. Mom greeted me with a strange smile and a kiss on the cheek that did not land. I knew this was not about family. It was a setup. And when Madison pulled out a blush pink folder and slid it across the table toward me, I did not even pretend to be surprised. "Sit, Jacob," she said sweetly. "We want to offer you an incredible opportunity. They never just wanted to see me. They wanted something." I did not sit. Not right away. Instead, I stared at the blush pink folder resting like a snake in the middle of the table. Glossy and smooth and dangerous. Madison's smile did not waver, but I could see the twitch at the corner of her mouth. That little tell when she was trying too hard to act like she was in control. "I thought this was a family dinner," I said. "It is," Mom chimed in quickly. "But we wanted to talk to you about something exciting." Dad nodded, stepping forward like a project manager about to present quarterly projections. "Your sister has been working on a business venture for the past few months, and we think there is a real opportunity here for the family." I looked at Madison. She pushed the folder a few inches closer to me. "It is called Aura Bloom Wellness, an exclusive wellness boutique facials, infrared therapy, custom skincare lines. It is luxury meets holistic. Think Lux Aura, but better." "Catchy," I said flatly. "Let me guess, you are the face of it." "I am the brand," she said, like it was obvious. "I already have over 80,000 followers, and one of my reels went semi-viral last month." I raised an eyebrow. "We have secured a location in the Brickyard district." Dad jumped in, his voice now firm and confident. "And Madison has drafted a rollout plan for Q4. He said Q4 like this was not a family living room. Mom slid her wine glass closer to the center. "We just need a little financial backing to get through launch." There it was. The real reason. How much I asked, even though I already knew it would not be a little. Madison lit up her hands, unfolding with practiced grace. Just $200,000 that would cover the lease, initial product inventory, social media campaigns, and influencer partnerships. I blinked slowly. "You want me to give you 200 grand? Not give, Dad corrected. "Invest with interest and equity." I almost laughed. "You want me to invest in a business that does not even exist yet, run by someone who overdrafted her account last month and tried to steal from mine the week after?" Mom stiffened. "That was a misunderstanding." "No," I snapped. "That was fraud." Madison crossed her arms. "Wow, you really love throwing that in my face." "No, Madison," I said calmly. "I am just not pretending it did not happen." I opened the folder. Inside was a pitch deck, poorly formatted vague projections, a list of potential partnerships with brands I knew would not touch this venture with a 10-foot pole. I flipped through page after page of pastel fluff and buzzwords. "You listed me as a potential investor in here," I said, holding up the second-to-last page. "You did not even talk to me before putting my name down." Mom's voice tightened. "We knew you would come around once you saw the vision." "I am not your bank," I said. "You are part of this family." Dad snapped. "When it is convenient." Madison's eyes narrowed. "So you are really going to say no?" "I am not just saying no," I said, dropping the folder back on the table. "I am saying this is a terrible idea. You do not have a real plan. You do not have financial backing. You do not have a team, a tested product, or even a clue how to run a business. You just have an aesthetic." Dad's face turned red. "Watch your tone." "No," I said, standing my ground. "Watch how you treat people. You skipped my graduation, tried to steal from me, and now expect me to fund your daughter's vanity project. I came here to give you a chance not to be insulted." Madison shoved her chair back. "You have always been jealous of me." I laughed. "Jealous of what?" "The constant bailouts, the fact that your only plan is to sell face masks and crystal-infused serums to people who cannot pronounce serotonin." Mom stood up. "Enough. Jacob, you are being cruel." "No," I said, picking up my bag. "I am being honest." I reached into my pocket and pulled out a thick envelope. "What is that?" Dad asked wearily. "Receipts," I said, dropping it next to the wine glass. "Credit rejections, loan denials, emails from banks who already said no to this spa idea. You have already pitched this to 3 different people, and when they all passed, you turned to me." Mom stared at the envelope like it was a grenade. "You knew it would not pass real scrutiny," I continued. "So you came to the one person you assumed would not say no." Madison's mouth opened and closed. She had no rebuttal. I leaned forward slightly, voice cold now. I am not your fallback. I am not your plan. I am not the guy you ignore until you need something. And then I turned to leave. No one stopped me. No one said a word. The last thing I heard before the door closed behind me was the sound of my father exhaling like a man watching a deal fall apart. I walked out into the night with my chest tight and my hands trembling. But I did not cry. I did not feel small. I did not feel broken. I felt clean free. I texted Emily. It was exactly what we thought. They wanted money. I walked out. She replied instantly. Proud of you. Drinks on me tomorrow. I smiled. Back in my apartment, I made tea and pulled out my laptop. The screen lit up with a notification from my startup dashboard. Our beta test had officially launched. Early engagement was higher than projected. I stared at the graph, the upward trend, the green bars, proof that I was building something real without their help, without their permission. I glanced at my diploma, still unframed, still quiet. It was not proof of my value. I was, and that would be enough. They saw me as a wallet. Tonight, I reminded them I have a spine. The next morning, I expected silence. No texts, no voicemails, just the usual vacuum that followed when I pushed back against my family. But I should have known. Madison would not take a clean no as the final word. At 9:03 a.m., she posted a reel. I was not following her anymore, but Emily sent it to me. You need to see this, her message read. The video opened with soft piano music and Madison speaking directly to the camera. Eyes, dewy voice trembling just enough to pass for sincerity. I have always believed in women supporting women, she began. But this week, I learned the hard way that not every woman in your life wants to see you win, even when that woman is your own sister. My stomach flipped. She went on, I had this beautiful dream to build a wellness sanctuary, a space for healing and empowerment. But when I asked someone I trusted for support, she said my dream was not real, that I was just an aesthetic, that I was not worth the investment. Cut to clips of her smiling with candles, skin care jars, adaptogen lattes, all filtered and curated to perfection. I am still building, she said, voice catching, because no one, not even blood, can dim your light if you do not let them. The comments poured in. You do not need her, queen. Jealousy is a disease. Keep shining. You are the strong sister. I stared at the screen, pulse racing. She had twisted everything. Made me the villain in a story where she was the wounded visionary. Emily FaceTimed me within minutes. Her eyebrows were already halfway up her forehead. Do I need to call a lawyer? She asked. I do not think slander covers passive-aggressive Instagram reels, I muttered. Emily rolled her eyes. People are already resharing it. You are getting DMs. One of my coworkers even sent it to me like, is this not that influencer from Westfield? I ran a hand through my hair. She is turning this into a campaign. Emily looked at me carefully. What are you going to do? I did not answer right away. I wanted to ignore it. Take the high road. Let her flame out on her own like she always did. But this was not just a family feud anymore. She had dragged my name into the court of public opinion, twisting reality into content. She was trying to ruin me to protect a lie, and people were believing it. I pulled open my laptop, logged into my LinkedIn, and stared at the screen for a long moment. Then I typed, some dreams are built on grit, others on guilt trips. When your own family tries to manipulate you into funding a fantasy and then slanders you for saying no, it hurts. But it also shows you exactly who they are. Protect your peace and your passwords. It was not direct. It was not dramatic. But it was real. Within hours, it had over 600 reactions. People messaged me privately sharing their own family stories, their own betrayals, their own hard boundaries. I had not expected that. I did not want sympathy. I wanted space. But instead, I got solidarity. By that evening, the family group chat, which I had muted months ago, lit up like a wildfire. Dad, that post was uncalled for. Mom, we do not air our dirty laundry online. Madison. Wow. Enjoy your 15 minutes. My stomach flipped. She went on. I had this beautiful dream to build a wellness sanctuary, a space for healing and empowerment. But when I asked someone I trusted for support, she said, my dream was not real, that I was just an aesthetic, that I was not worth the investment. Cut to clips of her smiling with candles, skincare jars, adaptogen lattes, all filtered and curated to perfection. I am still building, she said, voice catching, because no one, not even blood, can dim your light if you do not let them. The comments poured in. You do not need her, queen. Jealousy is a disease. Keep shining. You are the strong sister. I stared at the screen, pulse racing. She had twisted everything, made me the villain in a story where she was the wounded visionary. Emily Rhodes FaceTimed me within minutes. Her eyebrows were already halfway up her forehead. Do I need to call a lawyer? She asked. I do not think slander covers passive-aggressive Instagram reels, I muttered. Emily rolled her eyes. People are already resharing it. You are getting DMs. One of my co-workers even sent it to me like, is this not that influencer from Westfield? I ran a hand through my hair. She is turning this into a campaign. Emily looked at me carefully. What are you going to do? I did not answer right away. I wanted to ignore it. Take the high road. Let her flame out on her own like she always did. But this was not just a family feud anymore. She had dragged my name into the court of public opinion, twisting reality into content. She was trying to ruin me to protect a lie, and people were believing it. I pulled open my laptop, logged into my LinkedIn, and stared at the screen for a long moment. Then I typed, some dreams are built on grit, others on guilt trips. When your own family tries to manipulate you into funding a fantasy and then slanders you for saying no, it hurts. But it also shows you exactly who they are. Protect your peace and your passwords. It was not direct. It was not dramatic, but it was real. Within hours, it had over 600 reactions. People messaged me privately sharing their own family stories, their own betrayals, their own hard boundaries. I had not expected that. I did not want sympathy. I wanted space. But instead, I got solidarity. By that evening, the family group chat, which I had muted months ago, lit up like a wildfire. Dad, that post was uncalled for. Mom, we do not air our dirty laundry online. Madison. Wow. Enjoy your 15 minutes. I did not respond, not out of weakness, but because I was finally done explaining myself to people who had never listened. Anyway, Emily came over with takeout that night, Thai food and spring rolls. We sat cross-legged on my floor again, Charlie the cat asleep in her lap. You handled that better than I would have, she said, mouthful of pad. See you. I shrugged. I do not want to be her performing pain for attention, but you are allowed to have your voice. I nodded slowly. That is what I am figuring out. We clinked our chopsticks together like wine glasses, a weird little victory toast. That night, I fell asleep without replaying the argument. I did not feel vindicated. I did not feel righteous. I felt lighter. The next few days passed quietly. The Instagram drama died down, replaced by whatever trending scandal came next. Madison moved on to posting skincare routines and adaptogen latte reviews. My name faded from her captions. I thought it was over until I got the call. Monica Patel waved me into her office just before lunch on Thursday. She did not look angry, but she did not look casual either. I just had a conversation with one of our angel investors, she said. He has been a close contact for years. Knows your family. My stomach sank. They are hearing chatter, she continued. Apparently someone suggesting you are emotionally unstable, that you have a history of sabotage, that you are unreliable. My face went cold. Madison. Monica held up a hand. I know who it came from, and I do not believe a word of it. I let out a shaky breath I had not realized I was holding. But it does mean one thing, she said. They are scared. People only smear your name when they are threatened by your truth. I nodded. So what do I do? Monica's eyes were sharp. You keep building. You rise above it. You document everything. And if it escalates, you burn every bridge they use to get to you. She stood and patted my shoulder. You have got something they do not substance. Let that speak louder than their noise. That night I changed the privacy settings on every account. I scrubbed personal details from my bios. I built walls where doors used to be, not out of fear, out of self-respect. Because the truth was, I was not the same guy who cried over empty chairs and unspoken apologies. I was something they did not expect resilient, and I was just getting started. If they wanted a war, they should have prepared for someone who no longer needed their approval. 3 months later, I stood in the lobby of a glass-walled conference center watching strangers file in with name badges and bright-eyed ambition. My name tag read Jacob Harris Panelist. The irony was not lost on me. I had been invited to speak at a Men in FinTech forum, an actual stage, a real audience, and a microphone with my name attached. And this time there were no empty seats. Emily Rhodes was already in the 3rd row beaming. Monica Patel was backstage mouthing, "You have got this." And even my boss's boss, the one who once thought I was too quiet, was now leaning forward with a pen ready. And yet this was not the moment I had always dreamed of. It was not a fantasy payoff or some long overdue revenge. It was something better, closure without bitterness. Because I did not need applause anymore, just the peace of knowing I had survived and grown without it. When it was my turn to speak, I did not go for the flashy lines or the corporate safe buzzwords. I told them the truth about what it means to be the invisible one. About boundaries that feel like betrayal to those who have always benefited from your silence. About how healing is not a straight line, and how choosing yourself can look a lot like selfishness to the people who only loved you when you were useful. And when I told them about the day 6 chairs stayed empty at my graduation, no one laughed. They nodded. They understood. After the forum, I walked out into the sunshine with Emily's Stonehaven cities. Late summer air was warm, not too humid, and the city pulsed with its usual blend of urgency and possibility. "You crushed it," she said, looping her arm through mine. "Thanks," I said, smiling without effort for once. We stopped at a street vendor and got iced lattes in plastic cups that dripped condensation onto our hands. "You know what I have realized?" I said, sipping mine. "For the longest time, I thought love had to look like sacrifice. That if I just gave enough time, energy, money, they would finally see me." Emily nodded slowly. "But love without respect is not love. It is obligation, and I am done mistaking one for the other." She raised her coffee like a toast. "To chosen family." I clinked mine against hers. To chosen self. I had not spoken to Madison or my parents since the attempted investor smear. They had gone quiet, at least for now. I assumed they had retreated to whatever group chat they used to blame me for their problems, and I was okay with that. They were not monsters, just selfish, entitled, addicted to the version of me that stayed quiet and compliant. That version no longer existed. I did not hate them. I just did not chase them anymore. And that freedom, more than forgiveness, more than some tidy reconciliation, was the healing I did not know I needed. The real healing, though, came later that fall. One afternoon, I got an email from a woman I had never met. Her name was Lauren Becker, and her subject line read, "I saw your post." In the body of the message she wrote, I am in a similar place with my family. I have always been the fixer, the responsible one, and I am drowning in expectations I never agreed to. I read your post from back in June, and I just wanted to say thank you. You helped me feel less alone. I set a boundary for the first time last week. It was not perfect, but it was mine. I sat at my desk rereading that line over and over. It was not perfect, but it was mine. That was the story I never got growing up. That imperfect love could still be enough. That being alone did not mean being broken. That saying no could be the loudest, bravest yes of all. Sometimes when I walk past the graduation photos on store shelves in September, I still feel that old pang, that twinge of longing for something simple. A proud smile from a parent, a shoulder squeeze from someone who believed in me before I did. But then I remember what those 6 empty seats taught me. They were not just a symbol of what I lacked. They were proof of what I no longer needed. I did not need to be clapped for. I did not need a stage celebration. I needed to belong to myself. On the anniversary of my graduation, Emily and I hosted a little dinner on the rooftop of my building. Just 6 people, friends from work, her girlfriend, our neighbor downstairs who brings us cinnamon rolls when he bakes too many. We lit candles and old wine bottles, brought mismatched chairs up from the lobby, and passed around plates of lemon pasta and stories we had never told before. When dessert came, Emily raised a glass. To Jacob, she said, grinning, who finally framed his diploma. Everyone laughed, but it was not about the paper. It was about the person I had become without their permission. I looked around at the table at people who saw me not as a safety net or a shadow, but as someone worth showing up for. And for the first time in a long, long time, I felt full. Not in spite of the empty seats from before, but because I had stopped waiting for them to be filled. Some stories are not about winning them back. Some stories are about walking away and realizing you were whole all along. The laughter from the rooftop dinner still echoed pleasantly in my memory days later. The lemon pasta was gone. The mismatched chairs were back in the lobby, and the framed RVU diploma now hung straight and level above my dresser. A quiet testament to a battle won. It was not about the paper. It was about the resilience it represented. I had been whole all along. The silence from the Westfield side of my family had persisted. A vacuum that used to terrify me but now felt like breathable space. I assumed their group chat was still ablaze with blame, likely pointing fingers at me for lacking family values, while they figured out which new ethically dubious venture Madison would try to sell next. I was fine with being their villain. It was certainly less exhausting than being their savior. But the one thing I learned from my years as the invisible son was that my parents saw silence not as a boundary, but as a temporary pause button. They believed that given enough time, the responsible one would eventually power down his stubbornness and return to factory settings, useful, compliant, and ready to forgive. I should have known that a wall made of silence would eventually be breached by something louder. The first sign came not from them, but from Pioneer National Bank. I was deep in a pivot table at the fintech office, the air conditioning too cold as usual when my phone vibrated, an automated text alert. A large, unexpected payment was attempting to clear from my checking account. Not a transfer this time, a direct withdrawal. $5,000 labeled simply rent adjustment. My blood went cold. I locked my monitor, stood, and walked straight into Monica's office. She looked up from her dual screens, her expression shifting from focus to concerned instantly. "What is wrong, Jacob? You look like you just saw a ghost." "My parents." I said the words tight. "They just tried to take $5,000 labeled rent adjustment. I need to call the bank now." Monica did not blink. "Use my phone now. I will get you a quiet conference room." She understood the gravity immediately. It was not just about the money, but the boundary. In the sterile conference room, I got the Pioneer National Bank representative on the line. The transaction originated from an escrow company managing the property where my parents lived in Westfield. It was authorized by a signature they had on file. My signature from a long-forgotten power of attorney document I had signed when I was 18, so Dad could handle my college savings account quickly if needed. It was a common trusted practice, and I had forgotten about it entirely. The signature matched the old record, Mr. Harris, the bank rep, explained patiently. However, the transaction was flagged because the rent adjustment note is highly unusual for a property you do not own. We put a hold on the funds, but we need you to confirm the fraud immediately and revoke that POA. Revoke it, I ordered, my voice trembling with contained fury. Revoke all access today. When I hung up, I leaned my head against the cool glass wall. They had not just tried to take money. They had escalated the attack from a hack to a legal maneuver. They were weaponizing outdated trust, rent adjustment. What the hell did that mean? I knew I could not ignore this. The conflict was no longer emotional. It was structural. They had crossed the line from selfish to predatory. I drove straight to Emily's place after work, skipping dinner. When I told her sitting on her couch with Charlie draped across my lap, she was quieter than usual. They used a power of attorney. She whispered, her voice laced with disbelief. That is a level of malice, Jacob. It is not just about Madison's debt anymore. It is about control. But why rent adjustment? I paced her tiny living room. They own their house outright. I know they do. What rent? Maybe it is a code, Emily suggested, scratching Charlie's chin. Or maybe it is related to the business. Did you look at the Serenity Cove Wellness pitch deck closely? Did they list the property as collateral for some kind of loan? The thought stopped me dead. I remembered the red rejection slips I had thrown on their table. If they could not get a conventional loan for Serenity Cove Wellness, they might have found a private investor willing to take a high-risk gamble with my parents' house as the stake. And if the house was collateral, any financial hiccup could translate to a rent or repayment demand. Image over stability. My parents had always prioritized the appearance of wealth over real financial security. Now they might be leveraging their biggest asset for Madison's fantasy boutique, and they expected me, the responsible one, to pay the maintenance fee on their risk. The emotional core of the previous chapter, choosing self-respect, had to face its fiercest challenge, the urge to save them despite everything. The logical side of my brain screamed, "Let them fail." The vestigial childhood trauma side whispered, "If you let them fail, they will blame you and you will lose them forever." But I realized that losing them meant losing the people who only saw me as a wallet and a safety net. Was that a loss at all? I took Monica's advice, document everything. I spent the next 2 days compiling a detailed log of every betrayal, the 37 calls, the attempt to steal $8,200 via online banking, the smear campaign on LinkedIn, and now the $5,000 POA attempt. I had to confront them not for reconciliation, but for finality. This time I would not go to Westfield. I would not sit at their staged dinner table. I was done reacting. I sent a single calculated text message to the family group chat. It was not accusatory or emotional. It was a business memo. Jacob Harris. I received notification of an unauthorized attempt to withdraw $5,000 from my checking account using the 2018 POA. The POA has been officially revoked and submitted to the bank. All attempts to access my finances will be reported as fraud. Further communication must go through my legal representative. I waited. The silence was instantly shattered. The phone blew up not with texts, but with frantic accusatory calls from both Mom and Dad. I let them go to voicemail, listening later to the panicked, manipulative messages. Dad shouting, "Jacob, are you serious?" That was an emergency. That money was for the escrow fee on a lease extension. You have no idea what you just did to us. Call me back now. Mom sobbing. How could you do this to your family after everything we have done for you? That money was going to keep Madison's dream afloat. You are cold. You are cruel. You are not my son. I deleted the messages. The last sentence, "You are not my son," did not hurt. It felt like a confirmation. They were right. I was not that boy anymore. The conflict centered on the Serenity Cove wellness lease. They were not just trying to fund the startup. They were trying to save it from collapsing on the spot, indicating they were already deeply in debt. I decided I needed the truth not from them, but from the source of the chaos. The lease was in the Ironworks district. The spa had to be close to the Ironworks district. That Friday, instead of going to happy hour, I drove to the Ironworks district. It was a mix of trendy boutiques and old warehouses. I found the address for Serenity Cove Wellness, a gleaming high-end storefront tucked between a bespoke coffee shop and a minimalist art gallery. It looked exactly like Madison's Instagram feed, perfect, glossy, and entirely fake. The lights were on inside, but the windows were papered over with the blush pink branding. A small notice was taped discreetly to the door. Notice of default. Property repossession imminent. I froze. They were not just struggling. They had lost the lease, or were about to. The $5,000 was a desperate last-ditch effort to keep the landlord from locking them out. Just then the glass door opened and Madison stepped out. Her face pale, her glossy makeup streaked with tears. She did not look like a wellness guru. She looked like a child caught stealing candy. She was holding a large, expensive-looking framed print, an early mock-up of her logo. She saw me instantly. Her expression shifted from distress to white-hot fury. "You," she spat, marching toward me. "You did this, you cold, calculating bastard. You let your own family lose everything just because we missed your little ceremony." "I let you lose nothing," I said calmly, standing my ground on the sidewalk. "You gambled everything on an aesthetic and lost. I simply refused to be the cleanup crew. You revoked the POA in an emergency," she screamed, her voice cracking. "That money was the holding fee. We had until Monday to wire the full $8,200 for the back rent. That money was the down payment to keep the landlord from suing Dad. Back rent, not escrow, not a lease extension. $8,200 in back rent, the exact amount of her overdraft debt she tried to make me pay, now tied directly to the commercial property. The debts were intertwined. You tried to steal from me twice, Madison," I said, my voice quiet but firm. "And you think I owe you the money to save your failed boutique?" "It is not about the boutique." "Jacob," she shrieked, clutching the framed logo, "it is about the house. Dad mortgaged the Westfield house to cover the startup capital. If we default on the commercial lease, he defaults on the private loan they took out. It is cross-collateralized. We lose everything if that landlord sues for the full amount." Screaming blame accusations. This was the logic and emotion of my family. Their mistakes were my responsibility, and their failure was my fault. I felt a sudden profound calm wash over me. The truth was not a sudden, shocking revelation. It was the final, inevitable piece of a pattern I already knew. They had not wanted me to succeed. They needed me to be their insurance policy. That, I said, pointing to the default notice on the door, is the logical outcome of a terrible business decision. It has nothing to do with me. Madison took a shaky breath, her eyes widening, trying one last desperate appeal, switching tactics from fury to manipulation. "But Jacob, we are family. Please, if you help Dad consolidate this one loan just this once, I will shut down the boutique. I will get a real job. Mom and Dad are terrified. They will listen to you. You are the one who understands finance." And there it was. The core value of the old me. You are the one who understands finance. My worth was my utility. My value was zero when they did not need a favor. I shook my head slowly, feeling the boundary harden into steel. "I understand finance, Madison, and financially my best choice is to disengage immediately. I am done saving you. I am done being useful." I turned my back on the shimmering pink failure of Serenity Cove Wellness and walked toward my car. Madison screamed something behind me, a sound of pure entitled rage mixed with terror. But I kept walking. I got back to my tiny apartment in Stonehaven City, feeling an unexpected sense of freedom. The truth was out. The family house was on the line. I did not feel victorious. I felt exhausted, but clean. The battle was over. The boundary was set. Then my phone rang. Unknown number. I answered, expecting a final venomous call from my father. "Hello, Jacob Harris." A smooth, professional voice. "My name is Jonathan Briggs. I am the partner at Briggs & Myers Capital. I understand you are currently dealing with a cross-collateralized commercial and residential default related to the Serenity Cove Wellness property." I gripped the phone tighter. "And who are you?" "I am the private investor who financed the startup." "Briggs," said his voice, dropping slightly. "And I believe your parents' actions have made you and your savings a vital party to this recovery. We need to talk, Jacob. Your sister listed you as an emergency contact, but more importantly as a potential co-signer. I believe we have an asset that belongs to you." Co-signer. I never signed anything. What asset I demanded. The Redwood Valley University graduation gift your father promised me as good faith collateral last month? Briggs said. A dry, unsettling chuckle on the other end. He called it the only thing the boy cares about. "I currently have your official sealed and signed diploma in my office safe, Mr. Harris. It is not legal collateral, of course. It is simply leverage. Your father called it the only thing you truly value. Call me back when you are ready to negotiate." The dial tone was a dull, mocking sound in the sudden silence of my apartment. I stood there, phone pressed uselessly to my ear, listening to the static hiss that followed the chilling confidence of Jonathan Briggs. He called it the only thing the boy cares about. That sentence did not just hurt. It was a psychological hit, a calculated surgical strike. My diploma was not just a piece of paper. It was the physical proof of my 4 years of invisibility sacrifice and defiant self-sufficiency. It was the only thing I had ever earned entirely for myself, and the only thing they had not given me or taken from me until now. My father had not just used it as collateral. He had weaponized the one tangible symbol of my personal triumph. I looked across the room at the blank space above my dresser where the framed diploma had been hanging just hours earlier. Wait, had it been hanging there? A cold sweat broke out on my forehead. I raced over. I had not framed it yet, just leaned it against the wall in its cardboard folder. The folder was gone. The empty space was a gaping mark. When did they come here? I checked the new passcode lock I had installed. It had not been tampered with. They had the old key, of course, the one I had not bothered to retrieve because I had assumed my parents would not stoop to breaking and entering my tiny undesirable studio. I had changed the digital passcode, but the mechanical backup lock was still the original one from the first day I moved in. That was the depth of my naivety. They had not needed to steal the $5,000 because they had already stolen the item they considered more valuable for leverage. Slamming my fists against the dresser, I felt a familiar corrosive rage. But this time, it was tempered with a sharp, immediate clarity. This was not about money anymore. This was a battle for my narrative. This was a fight to reclaim the respect they had stolen not just for the past month, but for the past 2 decades. I called Emily. She answered on the second ring, sensing the tectonic shift in my voice. "Jacob, what happened? You sound like you ran a marathon." I explained the conversation with Jonathan Briggs, the missing diploma, and the sheer audacity of my father's betrayal. I spoke quickly, coldly, laying out the facts like dominoes. He called it collateral. I finished pacing a groove into my hardwood floor. He told this loan shark, this investor who is about to repossess their house, that my diploma is the one thing I care about. He signed it over as a good faith gift. Emily was silent for a long beat. Wow, that is genuinely disgusting. They did not just want your money, they wanted to strip you of your victory. The moment I walked away from them, I stopped being useful, I said, leaning against the wall, channeling Monica's systemic mindset. Now they need me to negotiate the entire cross-collateralized loan with Briggs, and they are using my diploma, the symbol of my self-made success, as the chokehold. The core psychological conflict was not logic versus emotion. It was self-respect versus the external validation it represented. Did I need that piece of paper to validate my years of work, or was the validation internal and untouchable? The logical answer was the latter, but the emotional gut punch was undeniable. "You need to call Briggs back," Emily stated, her voice firm, taking control of the chaos. "But you cannot go in there emotionally. You have to go in as the financial analyst who knows the system better than they do. You know the real value of the house, and you know the zero value of Serenity Cove Wellness, and the value of the diploma. That is priceless to you," she countered. "To Briggs, it is just a bargaining chip. You treat it like a liability he has to get rid of." I pulled up Briggs' number, which was still in my call history, and hit dial. I took a deep breath, replacing the shock with the cold, sterile confidence of a fintech analyst. Briggs answered immediately, clearly expecting my call. "Welcome back, Mr. Harris. Ready to talk about your future?" "I am ready to talk about the valuation of a defaulted asset, Mr. Briggs." I corrected, my voice steady. "My degree is a document, not negotiable collateral. You are holding stolen property. We need to dispense with the dramatics and talk about the loan." Briggs chuckled again, that dry, unsettling sound. "I like you, Jacob. You have your father's nerve, but thankfully not his debt. Let us talk numbers. Your parents are on the hook for $200,000. They have defaulted on the commercial lease in the Ironworks district, which triggered the cross-collateralization with the Westfield property. I know the structure I cut in. I also know the Westfield property is worth about $950,000, and the commercial property is a toxic asset with no viable tenant and $8,200 in back rent due. Your $200,000 note is severely under-collateralized by the commercial property and only secured by the family's equity in the residential home. I heard a sharp intake of breath on Briggs' end. He had not expected me to have the numbers. "The real issue, Mr. Briggs, is that my father is a documented liability who tried to commit fraud to raise the holding fee. My sister is the face of a failed brand, and I am the one person with the financial stability to liquidate this mess cleanly. But I have zero legal obligation to you or them. Why should I help, Briggs?" Paused the silence, now heavier laced with respect. "Because of the diploma, Jacob, it means something to you. It means nothing to you," I countered, leaning into the offensive. "It is a liability. My father used a personal asset that does not belong to him as collateral for a commercial loan. That is highly unethical, possibly illegal, and certainly exposes you to unnecessary legal action, which will delay your foreclosure on the residential property by months. I am offering you a clean exit." The adrenaline was pumping now. This was the ultimate high-stakes negotiation, the most terrifying pitch of my career. The value I was emphasizing was self-control and courage. The courage to walk away from a personal threat and treat it as a cold business problem. "What is your proposal?" Mr. Harris Briggs finally asked. The shift in tone was palpable. He was negotiating with the analyst, not the son. "I will personally purchase the $200,000 note from you at a discount, say 15%, provided the following conditions are met immediately." The funds came from a combination of my restricted stock vest years of savings and a structured bridge facility arranged through Monica's legal team, Serenity Cove Wellness. 1. You return my diploma via certified secure courier to Monica's office by the end of tomorrow. 2. You provide me with the original signed documents for the loan, including the POA my father used, so I can document the fraud and finalize its revocation. 3. You have absolutely no further contact with me or my family. I take on the debt, and I deal with the collateral, the house. I had bought my family's debt. I was taking ownership of the house, which would force them out and liquidate their toxic assets. But I would control the foreclosure process, ensuring my parents did not walk away penniless, a final practical act of the responsible one, but done entirely on my own terms. Briggs was quiet for nearly a minute. I waited, heart hammering against my ribs, convinced I had pushed too hard. "Mr. Harris," he finally said, "you just bought yourself a problem. I will take the 15% discount. Send me the letter of intent to purchase immediately. The diploma will be on its way by 5:00 p.m. tomorrow." This never happened. I hung up my hands, shaking uncontrollably, but not from fear, from victory. I had just purchased my freedom, my boundary, and the physical symbol of my achievement, all while taking control of the very thing they had used to manipulate me. The house was now my leverage, the ultimate reversal. I spent the next hour drafting the LOI, sending a copy to Monica with a single line. "This is the clean exit." She replied with a thumbs-up emoji and a promise to execute the wire transfer in the morning. The next afternoon, a sealed package arrived at the fintech office, delivered by armored courier. Inside, wrapped in a protective sleeve, was my official RVU diploma. The seal was unbroken. I carried it home and for the first time cried not from pain, but from the realization of how deeply I had internalized the fight for that piece of paper. I realized the degree did not define my self-worth. The courage I used to get it back did. I framed it myself that night, not for them, but for the man who fought for his own value. The closure was not complete until the confrontation with my parents. I did not visit. I sent a certified letter to their Westfield address. Effective immediately, Briggs & Myers Capital has transferred the $200,000 note to a holding company I now control. You are in violation of the terms of the loan. I will not foreclose on the residential property immediately. However, you have 90 days to vacate the premises. After 90 days, the house will be listed for sale. I will cover the remaining mortgage and return the net equity to you after the loan is paid. This is not a negotiation. This is the final act of the responsible one. Jacob Harris. The phone calls that followed were catastrophic, screaming denial threats of legal action, but I never answered. They called Emily. They called Monica. They even tried to contact my neighbor who bakes the cinnamon rolls. My boundaries held firm. 3 months later, the Westfield house was sold. The price was exactly what I had projected in my analyst role. After covering the consolidated loan and the remaining mortgage, my parents received a substantial check for the net equity. It was a lifeline they did not deserve, but it satisfied the vestigial desire to ensure they were not destitute. My final act of financial responsibility was also my final severing. The last piece of communication I received was a terse email from my father's old address. It did not mention the money. It simply read, "You got your paper back. You always wanted everything, Jacob." I deleted it without reading it a second time. I had not wanted everything. I had wanted a fraction of the respect they showered on Madison's facade. I had settled for something better, absolute self-possession. I moved into a small condo I purchased near Stonehaven City with the profit from the house sale, a new home bought not with family money, but with the tactical cleanup of family debt. I finally felt a sense of ownership, not just of my finances, but of my future. One evening, Emily came over. We were sitting on my new patio, sipping cheap wine, watching the city lights. "So what happens now?" she asked. I smiled, looking at the city I was now truly a part of, built on my own grit, not their guilt. "Now," I said, leaning back. "Now the responsible one gets to be free." But freedom, like silence, can be deceptive. I had successfully severed my financial ties and broken the psychological hold of my parents and Madison. The threat was gone. The collateral was secured. I thought I had accounted for every variable in their chaotic system. I was wrong. A week later, I received an official-looking envelope from the RVU registrar's office. Inside was a single curt letter. To Mr. Jacob Harris, following an inquiry from a family member regarding financial discrepancies surrounding your student account and scholarship documentation. From 4 years ago, we are compelled to initiate an internal audit. Until the matter is resolved, your degree record has been placed under temporary verification, hold pending internal audit RVU office of the registrar. I stared at the words temporarily suspended. Madison. She did not have my money anymore. She did not have the house. So she went after the one thing she knew I could not buy back my past. She was attempting to invalidate the achievement itself, proving my father's collateral assessment, the only thing the boy cares about, right in the most devastating way possible.